Good afternoon, fellow yogis. Christina here. I am prepared to discuss Sutra number 3 and 4. I have the Yoga Sutras of Patanjali, and that's what I'm going by. If you guys want to get yourselves a copy of it and follow me there, you can. Told you I was going to try to not just post regular asana yoga videos, but also videos on the sutras, because yoga has 8 limbs, or at least I teach Ashtanga, which is the 8 limbs of yoga, means 8 limbs, and the sutras are highly beneficial in kind of reading and understanding how yoga works. And so we've already talked about 1 and 2 in a previous video, and now we're going to talk about 3 and 4. And so once you begin your practice, you'll notice it immediately to some degree, but it takes a little bit of practice. I would say maybe a few weeks, for some a few months. But you'll start to notice something happening in regards to your practice. Number 1, the mind ceases, which is Sutra number 1 and 2. You practice, and then ceasing of the mind chatter occurs. And then number 3 is, then the seer, the self, abides in his or her own nature. And number 4, I like reading these together, at other times the seer or the self appears to assume the forms of the mental modifications. And so when we're not in practice, and when we're just experiencing the outer world, we can get overwhelmed, especially when it comes to desire, the media, watching, television, movies, things like that. There's a list, a plethora, and that's discussed further on in the sutras. But we get so involved with the mental modifications, what we're observing in the outer world, we get so attached to it that we tend to think we are it. Sutra number 4 is, we identify with the self, meaning we think we're a man, we think we're a woman, those labels. We think we're our car, we think we're our phones. We really identify with what we wear. We want it to, the way we dress, to express our personality, but we're not any of that. And the more you practice yoga, Sutra number 3, the seer, the self, abides in his or her own true nature. We start to notice that we are not our bodies, we're not our minds. And if we're not our thoughts, if we're not what's out here in the physical, then who are we? And the answer to that is that we just are, that we are the seer, we are the observer. We know that to be the truth. But what we must understand in regards to the seer is that when we dissolve our attachment to the outer, we're peaceful, we're loving, we're happy, joyful, we're calm. That's a description of the seer. When the seer is abiding in its own true nature, we're at peace, and we're all the same. And so the few things that I highlighted in this Sutra number 3 was, we are not our bodies, we are not the mind. And the seer knows that the body and the mind is acting out in front of us, but it doesn't get involved in it. So that's healthy, when we can go out in the outer world and we can see the body, the mind, acting out in front of us, but we're not attached to it. We're still observing. Seeing through the eyes of Source is the way it's explained through Esther Hicks or Abraham. So that's an example if you ever want to check her out on YouTube. And so yeah, and the last thing that I highlighted here was by making the mind clean and pure. So through practice, through your yoga practice, we are clearing the mind. We're purifying the mind and the body. We feel we've gone back, or we appear to have gone back to our original state, which is calm, which is peaceful. So it's a blessing. And so how do we, what ways are we able to see through the eyes of Source without having to get into an hour and 15-minute yoga practice every single day? And because it doesn't take that much practice every day. It's simply waking up, noticing right when we get out of bed, when we open our eyes and take our first breath, oh, there's our first breath. If we start to get into the mind chatter then, like this morning when my mind chatter kicked in right out of bed, I look outside and I see that the sky is blue, that the sun is shining, and I say to myself, oh, it's a brand new day, it's beautiful outside, and I get up and I try to follow that for as long as possible before more thoughts start to take over. And so check in with yourself daily. That's in my notes here. Do yoga if you can, even if it's 10, 15 minutes, not an hour and 15, and meditate. And to sit in silence, to turn the media off for just a little bit, television, the news, especially if you look at the news right now, because even I've been watching the news under the circumstances that we're in just to keep up. But I also notice as I'm watching the news that it's kind of like our mind chatter. It tends to repeat itself over and over. I spoke about that in class this morning on Zoom. But if you can notice that it's repeating itself, that's a good indicator that you need to turn it off for a little while, because it'll continue to replay throughout the day, and you only need a little bit of the news daily to get caught up with what you need to know or what's going on. And then observe your mind chatter without judgment. So to turn off the media, to turn off the television for a little bit, and just observe your mind chatter with no judgment. Just kind of notice what you're thinking about. Are you worrying? Are you feeling blissful? And just your ability to notice that you have acknowledged that you do talk to yourself and answer yourself, and that mind chatter is there is liberating. It's liberating. So anyway, that's Sutra 3 and 4. I wanted to thank you all for joining me in on Zoom classes. If you don't know what that is, you don't have to download the application in order to join me in one of those classes that are live. But all you do have to give me your email or a way to text you, or a way to get the link to you. So if you haven't joined in because you don't have you don't know how to get to the link or whatever, just call me or text me, email me, and let me know, and I'll get it to you. Otherwise, you still have YouTube, you still have SoundCloud, and that's it. I hope that you are all well, and remember, we're all in this together, and it's important for us to keep our practice up. And until